Inflation. Everybody feels it and nobody likes it. But what if I told you that the nuances of inflation go far beyond the political talking points and blame game that we often see from our politicians? So what is inflation? How do we get to where we are? And is there hope for families and small businesses moving forward? Greg Moreland of the National Federation of Independent Business joins us to talk about that and so much more. That's all coming up right here, right now. I'm Sam Chen, and this is Face the Issues. Good evening and welcome to Face the Issues. I'm Sam Chen. Inflation, all of us feel it, no matter your income, no matter where you work or where you live. It is something that affects every family and every community. And there's no politician that likes inflation. But what actually is it? How is it impacting our families, our communities, and our small businesses? And is there anything we can do about it? Greg Moreland is the Pennsylvania State Director of the National Federation of Independent Business. He's been on the show before, and he joins us again today. Greg, welcome back to Face the Issues.
Hey, thanks for having me, Sam. I appreciate it.
It's always good to have you. And Greg, let's start with what inflation is. According to Investopedia, the definition of inflation is the decline of purchasing power over a given of a given currency over time. In other words, it's the increase of price of goods and services that we would see. Now, that's a nice economics definition to deal with, but for viewers and for families who are watching this, what does inflation mean in regular terms?
Sure. It's really quite simple, Sam. You know, when companies are struggling to keep up with consumer demand for goods and services, prices increase. About 50% of our small business members still have vacant positions in their companies. There's no way that these companies can operate at 100% capacity with only 50% of the workforce. And this leads to supply chain shortages, rising labor costs, labor shortfalls, and that all affects inflation. You know, I think of back when I was a child, I hung out a lot at the Hummelstown Swim Club. And it really gets back to your purchasing power of $1. I used to take a couple dollars each day there, and I could get 100 Swedish fish for just $1. You know, 100. You can't do that today. You know, so when you go to the convenience store, you might get, 14, 15 fish in a bag now for $1.79. You know, if I would have saved my dollar back then and still had that physical dollar, my purchasing power of that dollar would be much diminished today. So $1 today is not $1 tomorrow. And why? It's because of inflation.
So there's two sides of this. The same dollar gets you less of the product, or you get the same amount of the product, but now you need more than that dollar.
Yeah, correct. And I think what we've seen in recent months and over the past year and a half or so is that we've seen a drastic increase in prices of goods and services. And when we have that, we end up not having as much left in our pocketbook and in our checking accounts that we may need for other vital purchases.
Greg, let me ask you this. When you watch political debates, Republicans almost unilaterally say inflation is happening because Joe Biden is president. Democrats almost unilaterally say inflation is happening because Vladimir Putin has invaded Ukraine. It's really a little bit more nuanced than this, isn't it? What causes inflation?
Yeah, there are many different factors that go into inflation. Politicians never want to take credit for negative economic circumstances. That's never been a part of their DNA. But the truth is that public policy decisions, they have very real world consequences on the state of the economy. You know, while the war in Ukraine has certainly affected inflation, the United States was already beginning to experience what, the Biden administration deemed to be transitory inflation prior to that. And I think there's no one answer for what has caused our current inflationary situation, but there's a multitude of reasons. And I think that the majority of the issues, though, could have been solved domestically, and instead of just sitting back and saying, oh, this is temporary and it'll go away shortly. We don't need to really do too much. Now, most economists expect the inflation to remain painfully elevated well into this year and well beyond this year. with demand still outpacing supply. And so until we get manufacturing plants and productivity back up to 100%, the demand is going to outweigh the supply, and that inherently just drives cost up.
Greg, let me ask you about this. There's a number of things that have been mentioned with the current economic situation, supply chain issues, the invasion of Ukraine, short staffing issues. We all remember when that boat famously got stuck trying to get this stuff out. The most recent shortage of baby formula that, from one plant. There's a number of these different situations. Are these contributing factors to inflation, or are these an effect of inflation, or is it a little bit of both?
I think that they're really government policies really have a little bit of a both. They have a foot in both pools, I would say. During COVID, I think many of the states and nations around the globe completely shut down. And some of them still have enormous restrictions in place. And so the scope and the scale of the shutdowns was enormous. And the supply chain disruptions that resulted, were predictable. I'm not sure that the scale of the supply chain disruptions was predictable. But the one component that I believe has far outpaced expectations is the return to workforce. Again, you can't produce 100% capacity with only 50% of the workforce. Here in PA, the governor shut everything down and the workers went to the UC system. They got paid more than they would have if they went to work. When their benefits eroded, many of them looked for different jobs in different sectors. They wanted a better job with, air conditioning, a computer, flexible work environment. But this was to the detriment of many manufacturing, transportation, truck driving, the service industry, and construction industry. And so while these industries are still struggling mightily today, this is all negatively affecting inflation. Small businesses can only offer so much in terms of salary and benefits to attract employees before their business becomes unprofitable and they need to close down. So I think that we have taken a path of not being energy independent anymore. And so when you don't possess the resources here at home, and you're counting on others for those resources, and there may be conflicts throughout the globe that interrupt that supply chain, limit the supply, but the demand is still there. We're going to see increased prices, and unfortunately, that's the result of kind of the last several years of policy making, I believe, both at the federal level and at the state level.
Greg, you've talked a little bit about the idea of supply and demand, and that playing a key factor into inflation. Obviously, a lot of different practical factors, but they all play into this idea of differing values of supply and demand. Can you explain the principles of supply and demand for our viewers?
Sure. I mean, whenever you have an abundance of a product, it becomes slightly less valuable because of its sheer abundance of the product. Whenever you have a limited amount of a product, then the dollar figure or the value of that product often increases because of its scarcity. And so what we're seeing in many products, and I think if you go to the grocery store and just take a look at the shelves, is that many of the factories that were shut down and reopened again, and that they're now manufacturing their products or producing their products, they aren't producing 100% capacity. And so they're not able to get the supplies out fast enough for those products to remain on the shelves. We've seen that in the baby formula industry. There wasn't enough supply here in America to fulfill our obligation to the nursing mothers that needed that to take care of their children. We've had to go to other countries to have them subsidize our industry here in America. And that's unfortunate. We really need to be focusing on policies that reshore American countries back into the states and hopefully right back here into the Commonwealth, so that we can avoid these future conflicts and the future issues where we just simply can't get our hands on the materials we need to make the products that our citizens desire and need to live every day.
Yeah, Greg, one of the things that you hear a lot about are candidates for office will say, if you elect me, then we can end inflation. I was doing some commentary on one of the most recent GOP Senate primary debates in the state. And all the candidates on the stage said, listen, ending inflation, the cause is pretty simple. It was electing President Biden, and the solution is pretty simple. It's electing me to the Senate. It's not that simple, as we both know. But what are some of the policy pieces that at NFIB you guys want to see that you think could be helpful for combating inflation?
Sure. Well, I think, many of our small businesses right now have been working through the pandemic, and some of them have taken a loss in some years. And in Pennsylvania, I think it's kind of unfathomable that small entities, pass-through entities, S-corps, LLCs cannot take net operating losses. When they suffer a loss in a year, they should be able to claim that loss. Now, corporations can claim that net operating loss. I think the General Assembly just took a look at and in the budget and reducing the corporate net income tax by 50% over the next 10 years, but they neglected to address tax cuts on Main Street businesses that make up the fabric of our community. I think government interference with businesses has always been a problem. Our businesses want to be free and clear of intrusive government interference, right? They want to be left to their own device to be allowed to take care of their employees and their customers and grow their business without continuous regulations, fees, costs, burdens, mandates placed upon them by the government. If we continue to go down that route, we're going to see, large entities are going to become the fabric of our communities. No longer will we have, Joe's Pizza Shop. It'll be a big conglomerate, and you can go inside of Walmart and get your pizzas. I think that truly we need to be taking a better look at the fabric of our communities, our neighbors, our family members who own the small business that have taken a risk and gone out and employed their other neighbors and other, community members. Because if we get rid of them and with bad policies, we're not going to be in a better place. We're going to certainly be in a much worse off situation.
Greg, thank you for that breakdown. We're going to go to break, but don't go away. When we come back, I want to talk about the budget that you mentioned that just recently passed here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, what you see in that budget that could be hopeful or could be troubling as we move forward with inflation. So don't go away. We'll be right back.
Face the Issues is produced and recorded in the studios of Lighthouse TV. Positively different.
Welcome back to Face the Issues. Greg, thank you again for joining us. I want to shift to the look at solutions. We can all sit and complain about inflation. The reality is small businesses, families are looking for answers on how they can weather that storm. There are a lot of metrics that are used in evaluating inflation. One metric that the NFIB uses is your Small Business Optimism Index. Can you first tell us what that is and what it is that you guys are measuring through that?
Sure. So NFIB has a great research center in which we ballot, our members nationwide. We have about 300,000 nationwide, 13,000 here in the Commonwealth, and we ballot them often to understand better their positions in the state of small business. What we have found through the Small Business Optimism Index is that we are at an all-time low for business optimism over the next 6 months. And I think this is one of the precursors to a potential recession that we can identify prior to a recession. But it is certainly, we've been monitoring these numbers and collecting these numbers for nearly 50 years now. And for that to be at an all-time low right now, it's very troublesome, very concerning for our members, and it does not speak highly of current economic conditions.
And that's certainly distressing information to be headed to a recession. Most families would tell you that they feel it. What would your advice be to families or individuals or small businesses that are feeling the pinch right now? We talked about policy changes we like to see, but to the mom and pop shop, to the Joe's Pizza, as you mentioned earlier, what do you say for them to be doing right now?
Well, I think save as much cash as you possibly can. I think cash is king in the business of a small business. So they really need to be looking at hours, their cost outlays, and products and services that they're offering, and streamlining that to better cut down on waste and expenditures that may not recoup money back into their pockets. It's an extremely tough time right now for small businesses. Many are having to cut hours, cut services, cut products out of their line, and so all of that ultimately comes off of the end of year budget, and they're not getting that revenue, and so they need to be looking at their business model and being flexible in their ability to shift. And large corporations, obviously, with their economies of scale, are often much better at shifting on a dime. But small businesses also need to be prepared for that, because potential recession and could be looming. And we certainly want our small businesses to be able to weather the storm. And sometimes you can't do that without cash on hand.
Greg, that's a good point. To your point, necessity is the mother of invention. And even without recessions and inflation, we often see this, to your point, with the corporate world, where sometimes just society has changed. I think Kodak is the great example of that. Society changes, moves digital. They continue to hold on to film. If you don't adapt, you're not going to be in business. And so that adaptability is key.
Absolutely.
Greg, I want to ask you about the Pennsylvania budget. As the Commonwealth passes this budget every year, it's rarely on time, but it is done. And there are things in this budget that you believe are promising.
There are. I think the budget was a little bit late this year, got done after the July 4th holiday. Constitutionally needs to be completed by June 30th, but no one's going to get a citation in the mail for that. So, we would rather have a good budget than an on-time budget. And I think that's what we got here. We expected a little bit more fireworks since they kept us here for the 4th of July holiday. But we were excited with the final product. And I think it really it is a budget that was looking to the future, right? And I think the Independent Fiscal Office right now is projecting that in several years there will be a downturn here in the Commonwealth, and that revenues don't look as rosy as they look right now. Look, the government is the biggest beneficiary of inflation. Let's not beat around the bush. Whenever you're paying higher cost and higher dollar figures for your products, the government's collecting more money. And I think that's what we saw over the last year. About $6.2 billion extra on the table, not including the federal dollars. They put about $2.1 billion into the rainy day fund for a total of $5 billion, and that's going to prevent future tax increases. Hopefully, that we can certainly prevent that because our business owners don't want to see that occur anytime soon. But there were also some tax strategies that were beneficial to small businesses. One is the Section 179 expense deductions that we've been advocating for over 10 years. Small businesses, when they purchase large equipment, could only write off $25,000 per year over the lifetime of equipment. But that's for pass-through entities. But if you look at the corporate law, corporations can write off over $1 million in year one. That's not fair. We needed to encourage our small business owners to take risks, just like we encourage our corporations to take risks. And so I was happy to see that the General Assembly and the governor agreed with us. And so business owners are now going to be able to write off more right up front on some of these large purchases. And so we also saw a reduction of the corporate net income tax. And while 75% of NFIB's membership is pass-through entities, only 25% corporate, we're very supportive of a reduction in corporate net income tax, because we realize that a rising tide lifts all ships. And so a better business climate here for corporations is going to spur a better business climate here for small businesses. But there were a couple missed opportunities, I feel, in the budget this year that are going to give us our marching orders for next year.
Greg, let me ask you about this tax benefit you just talked about. Because the budget is passed, this will take place this year, right? When businesses follow their taxes, they can take advantage of this.
Correct. Yeah, and the way that I like to explain it to individuals, where it's a little bit wonky because it's a tax law, but if you have two neighbors and one's a corporate farmer and one's a pass-through entity farmer, right? That pass-through entity, both farmers buy a tractor for $300,000, and the corporate farmer gets to write all of that off in year one. The pass-through entity under previous law could only write off $25,000 every year until the lifetime ran out, right? Now, the General Assembly and the governor fixed that issue. Each are going to be able to write off that large purchase in year one. And I think that's going to really encourage small business owners to take a little bit more risk, invest in their companies, invest in their employees, ultimately putting more tax dollars into the coffers of the state.
Greg, last time you were here, we were talking about the Great Resignation, a lot of people starting small businesses. One of the pieces of advice you gave was find yourself a good accountant. I assume with this new tax law, you're going to give the same advice to these small business owners. Talk to your accountants, make sure this is being taken advantage of.
Absolutely. An accountant is always a small business owner's best friend, or at least they should be, because they know this world much better than our small business owners know it on a day-to-day basis, and they can better understand where the tax liabilities are and the tax advantages are. And so I would always recommend to have someone take a look at it. And it's unfortunate it costs money, to have that done, but there are advantages of it, and there are certainly things that have been done in this year's budget that we would like our business owners to take full advantage of.
Greg, last question in this segment. We're in an inflationary period. You said even your index is looking at facing a recession. There are some promising things and then some missed opportunities in the budget. What is your outlook moving forward?
I think the outlook is pretty stable. I wouldn't say it's a glowing or it's super pessimistic on it. I think there are some great elected officials here in the Commonwealth, at least, that have been looking out for small businesses and have been looking out for the business community at large. And so I'm hopeful on a state level that we can maintain that, and we can keep working together with the administration and the leaders of both sides of the aisle, and driving good policies home that don't negatively affect small business or the business community or hamper growth into the future. So just working with the General Assembly to make sure that no harm is done, and we can put some relief back into the pockets of our small business owners.
Greg, it's a good word. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you for breaking that down. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Face the Issues. Greg, thank you again for joining us, for your insights. As you know, we always like to take the last few minutes and really just get to know our guests away from the work that you do. And one of the really interesting things that you've done in your life is you are a proud veteran of the United States Army, and you are a paratrooper. Tell us a little bit about your experiences serving.
Sure. Well, I enlisted in the Army after my undergraduate degree in 2008. Joined as a paratrooper and got placed in the 82nd Airborne, got deployed to Baghdad, Iraq for 11 months, and then re-enlisted along the way, went to Vicenza, Italy to the 173rd Airborne, and then was deployed to Afghanistan in 2012. Ultimately was injured in a vehicle-borne IED explosion in August 7th of 2012, ironically on National Purple Heart Day. So I received my Purple Heart on National Purple Heart Day. Those injuries ultimately led to my retirement a couple years later from the Army, but it was the joy of my life. It was an occupation that I loved and cared deeply for, and I certainly want to thank all the viewers out there that are watching, that are veterans and or currently serving. They make up the best of our world, and my hat's off to them.
And Greg, to you as well, and we thank you for your service. Your injuries you've mentioned, and you've been awarded the Purple Heart. How are you doing now?
Doing pretty good. Still fight with some pain and irritation in my neck and head and back. from the IED. But, hey, I got all my fingers, all my toes, and nothing's going to keep me, sitting back and not fighting for what I believe is right in our society. And while I may not wear the military uniform anymore, I certainly want to be involved in shaping the world around us. And I felt like, entering the policy and politics world was one way that I could serve and still be involved in shaping the world around us. And, I've fallen in love with this profession and the job and who I represent here at NFIB and the small business community. I'm fighting. I used to fight for my brothers and sisters to the left and right of me, and have, a gun and, be fighting an enemy force. Now I'm working with my small business owners and I'm standing up for them and fighting on their behalf. And so it's just changing gears a little bit, but still a fight.
There's a colleague of mine in the political world that always half-jokingly suggests that first-time candidates should be required to do boot camp before they're allowed to run for office. Greg, has your military service impacted how you view your work today, and if so, how?
Yeah, I think my military service truly taught me what a work ethic was and pride in my work. I got that as well from my dad, who was a Marine, a Vietnam veteran. And, he always taught me that, you work hard. Nothing is handed to you in life, and you can go out there and you can achieve great things, but you have to work for it. Not everybody's going to get $1 million job right off the bat, right? You got to go out there and you got to work hard for it, right? Not everyone wants to put in the time, but if you want to, the sky's the limit. And so, while I miss my military service often, it provided the foundation for who I am today. And my tenacity and my drive that really has propelled me to where I'm at today. And so without it, I think I certainly wouldn't be here today in this role, in this capacity. And, the military is a great option. Some people need it. I think that I was a kid that was kind of coming out of college. I needed someone to kind of give me that boot in the butt, for a little bit. And they surely gave it to me. And, I thank them for it, because I'm here, I'm alive, I'm well, and I'm happy. And so it was great.
Greg, and we're thankful to you for your service, and thank you for all that you continue to do today. That is our show. I want to thank Greg Moreland from NFIB of Pennsylvania for joining us, for breaking down the very complicated issue. And of course, I want to thank each of you for tuning in as well. We hope you'll join us again right back here next week. On behalf of all of us here at Face the Issues, my name is Sam Chen. Thank you and good night.